Okay, let's jump right into this explainer and investigate what is easily one of history's most enduring and, honestly, most fascinating aviation cold cases. We're talking about the 1937 disappearance of Amelia Earhart. Today, we're going to analyze the final pieces of evidence, map out that agonizing timeline, and critically contrast the prevailing theories. Basically, we want to frame this whole narrative as a series of unsolved questions. Questions that actually still baffle experts nearly a century later. I mean, just imagine a world without GPS, right? Navigating the globe relied purely on dead reckoning, a compass, and the stars. It was a time of immense bravery, but also, as we'll see, immense peril. So how does a world-famous pilot just vanish? Into thin air? To really wrap our heads around the sheer shock of this mystery, we have to put ourselves in 1937. Earhart wasn't just a good pilot, she was a bona fide global icon. We're talking as famous as any modern movie star today. She was known everywhere for fearlessly breaking barriers. And her goal for this flight? Wildly ambitious. She wanted to become the first woman to fly entirely around the world at the equator. Literally, the eyes of the entire world were watching her every single move. Her plane was primed, her route was meticulously planned down to the last drop of fuel, and the press was covering her daily. Which kind of makes her sudden, absolute disappearance without a single trace, well, all the more baffling. And when we look at the timeline of the flight, a really chilling narrative emerges. It's a triumph that just slowly unravels. Early 1937 began flawlessly. Everything went exactly according to her rigorous planning. Then we get to the mid-flight phase, and it was incredibly smooth. She successfully crossed continents, vast stretches of ocean, and multiple countries, racking up over 22,000 miles. She was literally on the home stretch. But the story takes a dark, sudden turn right as she approached the Pacific Ocean for the final major leg. This is exactly where a flawless expedition transforms into a desperate survival situation. She was entering one of the most unpredictable parts of her journey, and despite all her expertise, things just began to go terribly wrong. You might be wondering, why was this specific final leg of the journey so uniquely dangerous? Well, the answer lies in the terrifying geographical reality she faced the second she left New Guinea. She was nearing her next critical refueling stop, and her margin for error wasn't just small, it was essentially zero. Think about it. In modern aviation, computers are constantly tweaking our trajectories. But in Earhart's era, a single degree off course over thousands of miles meant completely missing your target. She was flying into this vast expanse where a tiny miscalculation in wind speed or even a slight error in reading the sun could literally mean the difference between life and death. She was up against an almost incomprehensible scale here. On one side, you have the vast expanse of the central Pacific Ocean. That's thousands upon thousands of miles of just an endless, featureless void of water. No landmarks, no distinct coastlines to guide you, nothing. And on the other side, her target, Howland Island. It is a tiny, isolated speck of land, barely a mile and a half long and half a mile wide. It was notoriously difficult to locate even in perfect, clear weather. She was trying to navigate to this microscopic target in an unforgiving expanse of water. It's the ultimate needle in a global haystack, and she's trying to find it while moving at over 150 miles per hour. As she closed in on that microscopic target, the situation turned completely dire. So what does a desperate final transmission actually tell us? Well, we have to strip away the romance of the flight and analyze her sparse, deteriorating communications almost like forensic evidence. Because the terrifying truth is, these fragmented radio calls are pretty much the only real-time data we have of her final moments. This wasn't a sudden, silent crash. It was a slow, agonizing degradation of contact. By analyzing the strength, the frequency, and the content of those messages, investigators have tried for decades to piece together the exact sequence of her unraveling situation. And that crisis escalated in a truly terrifying sequence. First, listeners on a nearby Coast Guard cutter noticed her radio messages were growing noticeably weaker. She was fighting against heavy static as she struggled to maintain contact. Then came the chilling update. She was running dangerously low on fuel. That meant her safety window had practically slammed shut. And finally, the absolute worst realization for any aviator. She explicitly reported she could not see the island. I mean, put yourself in that cockpit for a second. Imagine the sheer panic. You are running out of gas, flying over the endless open ocean, the sun is glaring off the water, and the tiny island that is your literal only chance of survival is just nowhere in sight. This brings us to our crucial, final piece of evidentiary data, her desperate transmission. We are on the line 157337. We are running on line north and south. And just a bit earlier, a super alarming detail.
flying at 1,000 feet. Now, why does that altitude matter so much? It's a haunting snapshot of a pilot flying dangerously low, most likely trying to get under a thick cloud cover just to establish visual contact with the surface. When you're lost over the ocean, altitude is your best friend for radio range and visibility. Dropping down to 1,000 feet meant she was desperate. She was looking for shadows, birds, waves, anything that indicated land. And after those final frantic pleas for help, total silence. The signal vanished completely.
So, when that trail goes completely cold, what happens next? Well, with the radio signal gone, immediate panic set in back on the mainland. This wasn't just any lost pilot. This was an American hero missing in action. The United States government shifted gears immediately, launching one of the largest and most unprecedented search operations in history. President Franklin D. Roosevelt actually personally authorized a massive rescue effort, pouring enormous resources into the Pacific. The mission flipped instantly from cheering on a record-breaking flight to a desperate, high-stakes race against the clock to pull 2 human beings out of the ocean. It was a massive response. An entire armada of ships was deployed, cutting through the waves, while search planes scanned tirelessly from above. They aggressively gridded thousands of square miles of open ocean. Literally every shadow on the water was investigated. Every remote atoll was flown over. Days dragged into weeks in this coordinated effort that cost millions of dollars. To put it in perspective, they covered an area roughly the size of Texas. But despite this absolute monumental operation, the investigation quickly hit a massive, unyielding brick wall. The sheer scale of the Pacific Ocean was just completely defeating the best technology and manpower the 1930s had to offer. The tragic reality of that historic search effort really boils down to one devastating number: 0. 0 wreckage discovered floating in the currents. 0 signs of the Lockheed Electra airplane. And absolutely 0 signs of Amelia Earhart or her navigator, Fred Noonan. It was honestly as if the ocean had simply opened up and swallowed them whole. Now, even today, finding a missing aircraft in the ocean is incredibly difficult. We've seen that with modern aviation mysteries. But back then, without black box pingers or satellite tracking, ending up with absolutely 0 physical evidence was a crippling blow to the entire investigation. Which leads us to the ultimate dilemma. Without a plane or even a single piece of physical wreckage to examine, what really happened? This absolute vacuum of physical evidence has, over the decades, forced experts, historians, and amateur sleuths to critically contrast a few popular yet heavily debated theories to try and fill in the blanks. Because, when the facts stop at the water's edge, speculation naturally takes over. And honestly, analyzing these theories gives us a fascinating look into how we try to process unresolved historical events. So, let's weigh the arguments impartially side by side. Basically, 3 major possibilities emerge. The most widely accepted theory among aviation experts is the simplest one. She ran out of fuel, crashed into the ocean, and the plane sank to the unsearchable depths of the Pacific. It definitely aligns with those final frantic radio calls. But others passionately argue for the castaway theory, the idea that she missed Howland but managed to land on a different remote coral atoll, surviving for a time before succumbing to the elements. And then there's the darker, more conspiratorial theory that she was captured by foreign military forces. But the most important takeaway here is this: regardless of which theory sounds the most plausible to you, not a single one of them has ever been definitively proven. And so, nearly a century later, the mystery endures. It stands as the ultimate unsolved aviation cold case. And it really serves as a stark, humbling reminder for all of us. No matter how famous you are, how meticulously you plan, or how much the entire world is rooting for you, human ambition can still be completely swallowed up by the unknown forces of nature. Earhart pushed the very boundaries of what was possible, and in doing so, she met the absolute limit of her era's technology. Despite all our modern advancements, our deep-sea submersibles and our satellite mapping, we are still left completely in the dark about her final resting place. I'll leave you with this final, haunting question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Did she truly vanish into the crushing depths of the ocean, or is there a completely different story we still haven't discovered? Are we simply looking at a tragic navigational error that ended in the water, or is the physical truth still out there somewhere, on a remote island, waiting patiently to be unearthed? Thank you so much for exploring this incredible case with me today, and as always, keep questioning the unknown.